Images. There are 6 image characteristics I'd like to talk about: format, color, size and resolution, speed, transparency, and animation. When I'm talking about format, consider GIFs and JPEGs. They're the most widely used. PNGs are gaining ground. They're just another format that has some of the same characteristics as GIF and JPEG. I look at it like it's kind of a hybrid. On the left, you see an image of Google, and on the right, one of your instructor. The Google image on the left, because it has few colors, is better suited to being saved as a GIF. On the right, the JPEG, which might have potentially thousands of colors in it and many gradients of color, would be best suited for a JPEG. Size and resolution. Make sure that you size your images for the largest audience possible. Size in this context refers to the physical size, 8 by 10 or 300 by 500 pixels. Consider that you only have so much real estate on a page. The most common screen resolution is 1024 by 768. Make sure that you size your images for your largest possible audience. And by the way, when we talk about resolution, know that more pixels equals a larger image. The size of the file also matters. Size here refers to the file size, not the resolution size or the number of pixels. But consider that the more pixels you have, that's just more information to save to your disk. So the higher the resolution, the larger the file size. And another factor is file format, GIFs versus JPEG. If you were to try and save a JPEG as a GIF file, because it has all of these gradients and thousands of colors, it doesn't compress very well. GIFs just don't work well with many thousands of colors. You'd get too large of a file size. Therefore, file format does matter. How does that affect speed? Used to affect it more. When we had 56K modems, it was really a bigger deal. Now, everybody has a broadband connection. Even so, you still want to save with the right file format at the right resolution. And by the way, when you're talking about creating photos and saving them, you want to save as a JPEG because of the gradients. GIFs, they do best with logos, and something like 256 colors, that's a GIF. Transparency. GIF and PNG support transparency. JPEG does not. Transparency allows us to create non-rectangular images. Have you ever seen a logo on a web page that it appears that you can see through the background? In other words, you don't see that white block around the image? That's because they've created transparency for everything except for the image logo. Animations. GIF can be animated. PNG and JPEG cannot. You can also create animations with Java and Flash. Where can you get images? Here's a list of some sites: Getty Images, Corbis, Google, Free Images, Flickr, CDs. I have a CD with 10,000 pieces of clip art on it, and Microsoft Clip Art. These are just to name a few. Many of the images that you get off the internet, such as with Getty Images, you'll have to pay for. Inserting images. Here's the syntax. Image, source, width, height, and alt. These are the items that you need at a minimum. IMG, that's the element for inserting image. And then you have attribute value pairs that follow. So, IMG, and then the first attribute value pair should be source, SRC, equals, and then you provide a file name within quotes. You also need to tell HTML in your browser how big you want this image to be, so you provide a width and height attribute value pairs. Finally, no image tag is complete without the alt tag. This is just an image description, and it's commonly used for screen readers. Also consider that if for some reason your image breaks or is deleted off of the server, this code will still be in your HTML file, and the image description, the alt tag, will show in place of your actual image that can't be found. I want you to also please note that images must be placed inside of a container tag such as a p tag or a div tag. I know we haven't learned about divs yet, but it's just another type of container. Image alternate text. As I mentioned, you need this. One thing that's interesting to note is that IE displays the alt text as a tooltip. By the way, if you don't include an alt tag, your page will not validate. You will get an error when you go to the W3org validator site. Image width and height. These are two of the attribute value pairs, as I mentioned, that you just definitely need to make sure that your browser knows the width and height to display your image as. Scaling images. When you want to enlarge or reduce the physical size of an image, you really should use an image editing tool such as Photoshop, Fireworks Image Ready, or some other tool. Let me show you an example of what not to do. This is Dreamweaver. I have a Google logo. Dreamweaver is an HTML editor, and within Dreamweaver I can drag these handles and I can resize my image. But this isn't the proper way to do it because, as you can see, I can get it out of proportion. I can make it too skinny, too tall, too wide, and that's not a good thing. Look at all these handles I can drag. The proper way to do things would be to bounce over to Fireworks or Photoshop or another image editor, and I have the button here, image size, where I can change the pixel dimensions. And look here, I have a constrain proportions checkbox. That just means keep everything where it's not too skinny or too wide, too tall. Don't change the proportions, in other words. Keep them as they are. Notice that both of these numbers change as I change one value. And there's my new resized image. It has less pixels, therefore less information, and therefore makes a smaller file size, which is good when we're talking about downloading stuff over the web. Aligning images. Here's what I want you to understand. The following set of slides show deprecated HTML code. These are the old ways that we used to do things. The reason that I include them in these slides is only because you may see this in practice, and I want you to know good from bad code. Another reason, some of you have an HTML background. Some of you learned how to code the old way. So I'll show you examples of what we're not going to be doing in this class. There's a strict separation between HTML and cascading style sheets. HTML is for structure. CSS or cascading style sheets will provide the formatting. These items that I'm going to show you in the next few slides are formatting features. They're deprecated. Do not use them. The align attribute, here it is. Here's an image tag. Here's the source equals file name attribute. And then the align attribute, right. If you see this in a page, that's fine. It's not that it's wrong. It's just not the way that we do things now. Because what you're doing is you're formatting an image by placing it in a specific location on the right side of the page. We don't do it that way anymore. We use cascading style sheet code. Here you see an example of aligning left for an image. And here you see something called H space and V space. And these are the attribute value pairs that will allow you to introduce, for example, 10 pixels of space horizontally, so on the left and right of the image. And you could introduce vertically on the top and bottom of an image some space. We don't do this anymore because we have margins and padding, and those are something that we'll learn about when we look at cascading style sheet code. You can also use align top, align middle, and align bottom in the past, but again, we don't use those in favor of cascading style sheet code. Horizontal rules. Although the horizontal rule is a valid tag, size equals 10, width, alignment, or no shading, these are things that will change the way that your horizontal rule looked in the past. We don't do those anymore either, in favor of marking up our changes and making our formatting changes with cascading style sheet code. And that's it with the deprecated tags. Next are favicons. These are neat. Have you ever seen those little icons, those little pictures that you see in your address bar and favorites menu? They look like this little Google symbol here. Here's how they're done, if you ever want to know. The example, right here, this line of text. I won't walk through this, but you could literally copy and paste this code right into the head of your document, your HTML document, like so. I'm going to copy it and come back over to Dreamweaver in the code view. And right here before the closing head tag, I could paste that. That's all you have to do. Well, in a way. We'll talk about that later. You've got to be able to create this favicon.ico file. There are many online editors that will let you do that. But at least you get an idea of what the code looks like.